we are reading together the book The Mother, which Sri Aurobindo brought into print in 1928. 6 chapters there are. The first chapter, which we read last time, was originally a message to the then organizing ashram around Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. A bold, clear statement about what is necessary to do in the field of sadhana, what is the human effort required to make manifest a supramental truth upon earth and arrive at a transformation which is the goal of their yoga. Each of the other chapters builds upon this. That was a statement, a powerful message. Some background might be helpful. When Mira Richard returned from Japan in April of 1920, within a few months, she had become a resident with others in the household of Sri Aurobindo. And when she entered the abode, she brought with her a grace, a beauty, a level even of prosperity that had not been enjoyed before. She stayed in the background. She was modest. Sri Aurobindo, of course, knew her inner being. Some felt, not all, and with time, her place in the scheme of things became more and more important from when they moved from what now we call the guest house there in Pondicherry over to the, let us just call it the Sri Aurobindo ashram as we know it today. That move in 1922 led to a period of expansion and growth, and more people were coming. Not a great many, but a number of people were coming and becoming residents of that community. Sri Aurobindo began to send more and more of the disciples to her for direction, for guidance in the development of their internal life, feeling that she had a truer capacity to develop their potential. In 1924, somewhere, she fell ill. And during that period of time, Sri Aurobindo said, I'm going to withdraw from contact with everyone and work on the yoga that she and I are doing together. Now, that only lasted a number of weeks, let us say, and then there was a recommencement. The evening talks began. But over time, more and more people, again, were being drawn to her. After Sri Aurobindo's birthday in 1926, he began to not withdraw, but to stand apart, to sit apart, and of their own, more and more of the disciples would gather around her for meditation. So people could feel a tremendous spiritual pressure on them. So a pressure to change, to deliver something new to the earth consciousness. Now, if you were looking at the ashram with external eyes, if you didn't have a developing inner vision, you would wonder at the sudden appearance of this person who had been behind the scenes to suddenly appear and have Sri Aurobindo proclaim her to be the mother. I want to note a couple of things. When you look at the history of spiritual development in India, one of the outstanding features is what is delivered in the Tantric sadhana. Why are people drawn to practice Tantra? Because it delivers powerful, dynamic results. And among the things that happen in the practice of the Tantra is that one becomes aware of the great goddess powers and invites those who are friendly to your nature into your being. We speak about the chakras, etc., as if they're absolute physical indices to the nature of our being, but they're general areas of our conscious map. And the descent in answer to an aspiration of the goddess power into a center means the coincidence of the goddess in that individual, all the way down from the Sarasradla, all the way down to the Muladhara chakra. When all are lined up and athrob with the presence and the power of the Divine Mother, in that person you see that manifestation. It is not simply that they become more brilliant, but in a sense, this is the habitat of the Divine Mother. So, as Sri Aurobindo and she are working to cause the descent of higher and higher planes of consciousness, they come not simply into him, they come into her as well. And as they become resident in her being, one can feel the outflowing power, the charge, the beauty, the light, the love. Everything that is manifest from the Divine Mother is being felt through her. And so Sri Aurobindo, who has been since 1910 or so, in constant communion with a number of what we call the goddess powers, working in his being, shape-shifting, enlarging, empowering, now sees that this supreme consciousness is manifesting through her. The period of readiness has been complete, and she is ready to stand forth. And you can see in her the energies, the sudden manifestation of endless powers, of bewildering numbers of personalities, because she is one. But Sri Lalita Sahasranama describes 1,000 names, none of them exhaustive, just indicative of what is her nature, what is the scope of her being, because there is, in manifestation, only the Mother. Now this person, Mira Richard, had become, in Sri Aurobindo's estimation, the Mother. She was full of that conscious power. Not that everybody in the ashram in those days could accept that, but that was a truth in his vision and experience. Where else do we see that? Chaitanya, the great Bhakta. Sometimes he was simply the most loving person in the community that worshipped Krishna. And other times, because the coincidence of that in this was so complete, that Krishna stood revealed. Where else do we see that? We see this also in Savitri, the poem, where one can feel something great in Savitri in all the books, but there's something waiting, and Sri Aurobindo refers to it page by page, and that higher self of hers waits above, waiting for the moment. And finally, there comes that point where darkness and death make a final stand. When that being who denies, who wants to call everything into oblivion, has to face her. And then it is not simply the normal figure of Savitri, even the expanded subliminal being which Savitri has become, but here is the one. And darkness retreats from that light because it has become coincident with her being. It has manifested through her. So when we look at the figure of Mira Alfasa, who becomes Mira Richard, who becomes the mother in the ashram, let us recognize that behind the scenes there is a gathering of power and force that is not visible outside. One of the things M.P. Pandit noted as he stood waiting to see her once is that somebody was complaining, Mother, I know you're a great being, but I cannot see it. In viewing you, I see a human. And she said, but don't you see all that is behind this figure? No. It is not easy to see that. But if we are going to be seekers, we must find. If we're going to be seers, we must see. And if we're going to discover our own soul, we have to discover the great soul of which we are a part. And so this book, The Mother, which Sri Aurobindo published in 1928, this collection of letters in this final grand sixth chapter, is meant to declare quietly to the world that she is that. In his experience, in his vision, he's not simply saying that for the convenience of a moment, to organize a collectivity in a difficult political situation. All those things may be true, but he saw her. As we say in parlance today, I see you. He saw her. We're going to read chapters 2 and 3 this evening, if I've left us time. And I'm going to read chapter 2, pause for a moment, then go on and read chapter 3. And if you're willing, come back and share some brief comments at the end of that. But let's hear the rolling thunder of Sri Aurobindo's mellifluous river of words. Chapter 2. In all that is done in the universe, the divine through his Shakti is behind all action, but he is veiled by his Yogamaya and works through the ego of the Jiva in the lower nature. In yoga also, it is the divine who is the sadhaka and the sadhana. It is his Shakti, with her light, power, knowledge, consciousness, ananda, acting upon the adhara, and, when it is open to her, pouring into it with these divine forces, that makes the sadhana possible. But so long as the lower nature is active, the personal effort of the sadhaka remains necessary. The personal effort required is a triple labor of aspiration, rejection, and surrender. An aspiration, vigilant, constant, unceasing. The mind's will, the heart's seeking, the ascent of the vital being. The will to open and make plastic the physical consciousness and nature. rejection of the movements of the lower nature, rejection of the mind's ideas, opinions, preferences, habits, constructions, so that the true knowledge may find free room in a silent mind, rejection of the vital nature's desires, demands, cravings, sensations, passions, selfishness, pride, arrogance, lust, greed, jealousy, envy, hostility to the truth, so that the true power and joy may pour from above into a calm, large, strong, and consecrated vital being. Rejection of the physical nature's stupidity, doubt, disbelief, obscurity, obstinacy, pettiness, laziness, unwillingness to change, tamas, so that the true stability of light, power, ananda, may establish itself in a body growing always more divine. Surrender of oneself and all one is and has, and every plane of the consciousness and every movement to the divine and the Shakti. In proportion as the surrender and self-consecration progress, the sadhaka becomes conscious of the divine Shakti doing the sadhana, pouring into him more and more of herself, founding in him the freedom and perfection of the divine nature. The more this conscious process replaces his own effort, the more rapid and true becomes his progress. But it cannot completely replace the necessity of personal effort until the surrender and consecration are pure and complete from top to bottom. Note that a tamasic surrender, refusing to fulfill the conditions, and calling on God to do everything and save one all the trouble and struggle, is a deception and does not lead to freedom and perfection. Three, to walk through life armored against all fear, peril, and disaster, only two things are needed, two that go always together: the grace of the Divine Mother, and on your side, an inner state made up of faith, sincerity, and surrender. Let your faith be pure, candid, and perfect. An egoistic faith in the mental and vital being, tainted by ambition, pride, vanity, mental arrogance, vital self-will, personal demand, desire for the petty satisfactions of the lower nature, is a low and smoke-obscured flame that cannot burn upwards to heaven. Regard your life as given you only for the divine work and to help in the divine manifestation. Desire nothing but the purity, force, light, wideness, calm, ananda of the divine consciousness and its insistence to transform and perfect your mind, life, and body. Ask for nothing but the divine, spiritual, and supramental truth, its realization on earth and in you and in all who are called and chosen, and the conditions needed for its creation and its victory over all opposing forces. Let your sincerity and surrender be genuine and entire. When you give yourself, give completely, without demand, without condition, without reservation, so that all in you shall belong to the Divine Mother, and nothing be left to the ego or given to any other power. The more complete your faith, sincerity, and surrender, the more will grace and protection be with you. And when the grace and protection of the Divine Mother are with you, what is there that can touch you, or whom need you fear? A little of it even will carry you through all difficulties, obstacles, and dangers. Surrounded by its full presence, you can go securely on your way because it is hers, careless of all menace, unaffected by any hostility, however powerful, whether from this world or from worlds invisible. Its touch can turn difficulties into opportunities, failure into success, and weakness into unfaltering strength. For the grace of the Divine Mother is the sanction of the Supreme, and now or tomorrow its effect is sure, a thing decreed, inevitable, and irresistible. If you have a moment or two more, we'll come back and look at some of the text here. So, chapter 2 is a letter written to Motilal Mehta in late May 1927, a few months after the great event, which occurred on 24 November 1926. He was there generally working to gain funding for the ashram. So this first sentence, in all that is done in the universe, the divine through his Shakti is behind all action, but he is veiled by his Yoga Maya and works through the ego of the Jiva in the lower nature. Well, this recalls to us the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, where Maheshwara produces the universe through his Shakti, through the power of Maya. So it sounds very like that. It's quite resonant with this great Upanishad's observation. The Shakti, of course, is a word that means power. Here, combined with Yoga Maya and the idea of the Jiva, we are left with the thought that this is the great consciousness which comprises the world, that there is nothing that is really outside this being. We perceive difficulties, layers of ignorance, because we work and live in the lower nature. The ego of the jiva, working in the lower nature, is what we typically identify with, not with the jiva itself. Sri Aurobindo leaves undescribed here whether he's referring to the jivatman, as he would describe it in the Life Divine. The term jiva simply means the living being of this conscious power of the divine called the Shakti. This is also remindful of that passage in the Gita where the nature of the Yoga Maya is discussed. The reference to sadhaka and sadhana, again, this comes from the root sad, S-A-D-H, if you will, which means to go straight. So a sadhana is something that takes you straight to a goal. A sadhak or a sadhika is someone who proceeds straight to their goal and achieves fulfillment without deviation, left or right. This reveals that sadhak, sadhana, the path and the person treading it are part of the divine, that all of this is the warp and the woof of the divine. So since you are yourself innately divine, you have no need to fear, as he'll get to in a passage or so. The adhara is like the jar, the vessel of the being, the body, the life, the mind, the whole instrumental nature that is ours. And the divine acts upon this, filling it with divine nectar when the jar is sufficiently emptied of the dross of normal experience. So if we want to be filled with divine ananda, we have to, in a sense, have room for it in our conscious lives. Through it all, though, the effort of the seeker is necessary, as long as the lower nature is active. And in no one is the lower nature not active. So we must always be working. We must always be practicing sadhana. Even if a spiritual goal has been achieved, even if Atman has been realized, if the psychic being has discovered, and one can seat oneself in the psychic and not be budged out of it, still the lower nature persists and sadhana continues on. There is no resting place. Aspiration, rejection, and surrender. If there is a set of mantras in the integral yoga, this is it. Be constantly refining, stoking interest, aspire. Push away from you the things that get in the way of the real growth, and surrender, but only to her. This description as we go through here, of the aspiration, the rejection, etc., these refer to opening of powers of light and tapas and equality, shama, calm, which are necessary as a basis for practice. Because it is these things which again become coincident with us, because really they exist above. The mental light is not the light we want. We want the divine light, jyoti, to descend. It isn't the power of the vital that will sufficiently address the imperfections of life. No, we have to invite the tapas from above. And the body will go to sleep when given the opportunity. We need the power and the stability of shama in us. So these things, aspiration, rejection, and surrender, all through the being, are required for us to succeed in this yoga, to reach the siddhi. But as you go, you become aware that you're not really doing it. The more your ego thinks it is doing it, the more slowly you proceed. When you can begin to perceive that actually she is doing it. Now you're making progress. You can thin the veil between you and her. And she can actively take over the practice of your sadhana and fill you with her own nature, consciousness, and delight. So, what we've described here is, again, resonant in the Tantra, and it's very interesting, isn't it, that Sri Aurobindo, in his Integral Yoga, is like the Tantra, affirmative towards nature, not destructive. Not rejection is his preference, but acceptance and transformation. So if we look at the third letter, this was written to Punam Chand Shah, who was in Gujarat, also questing for money for the ashram. That last one was written in May. This one was written in early August. And now finally, if you've noticed in chapters 1 and 2, there is no direct mention of mother. Grace, power, Shakti, yes. But not mother. Now finally, we get this term. So some number of months after she has been brought forward, Sri Aurobindo begins to write directly about it. So when he's describing the faith, faith, sincerity, and surrender are elements of yoga typically. Faith in Sanskrit is Shraddha, and sincerity would be Satyanishta, sticking to the truth, and surrender would be Samarpana. There are other words for these as well in Sanskrit, but these will suffice. But in every case, they work dynamically together. For Sri Aurobindo, faith is something really born from the soul. It's not a belief structure. It's something that emerges from within, knows as if innately what is true for it and what direction is right for it, and will apply itself to that with all vigor. That is faith. Sincerity means that we are one in our being, that we don't allow anything to contradict, to dissuade, to push us away or pull us away. To delay is deadly in the practice of yoga. So a sincere, faithful sadhak is sure to succeed if there is also surrender. Surrender not to one's own will and aspiration. I will do all this by myself. Thank you very much. I don't need the divine's help. But actually to permit the divine, to invite the divine, to welcome the divine, to sweep us up and carry us to new levels of being and consciousness. So these are psychic characteristics that are described here. And he also notes that you can't become a victim of the lower desires, the smoke-obscured flame. Remember how important Agni is from the Veda through the Upanishads, through the Gita, and into Sri Aurobindo's yoga. The idea of the flaming soul which purifies and takes all the fuel of one's life and makes it into an offering. This is a secret of our sadhana. This is how we genuinely proceed. Keeping nothing for ourselves, everything goes into that flame. Everything goes onto that altar. And our purpose is to do that, to carry each experience, to make an offering of every moment. So I think that we're ready to move towards Savitri. Yes, it is about time. And next week we'll take up chapters, 4 and 5 with some good fortune. Let us see if we can do all of that at once so that the remainder of the month we can spend in chapter 6. If we have to go a little quickly, maybe I'll make fewer comments so that we can do that. Tonight, though, we'll read from a section in the Book of the Divine Mother, which begins on page 312. Canto 2, the Adoration of the Divine Mother. Even while he stood on being's naked edge, and all the passion and seeking of his soul faced their extinction in some featureless vast, the presence he yearned for suddenly drew close. Across the silence of the ultimate calm, out of a marvelous transcendence core, a body of wonder and translucency, as if a sweet mystic summary of herself, escaping into the original bliss, had come enlarged out of eternity. Someone came, infinite and absolute. A being of wisdom, power, and delight. Even as a mother draws her child to her arms, took to her breast nature and world and soul, abolishing the signless emptiness, breaking the vacancy and voiceless hush, piercing the limitless unknowable, into the liberty of the motionless depths, a beautiful and felicitous luster stole. The power, the light, the bliss no word can speak, imaged itself in a surprising beam, and built a golden passage to his heart, touching through him all longing sentient things. A moment's sweetness of the all-beautiful cancelled the vanity of the cosmic whirl. A nature throbbing with a heart divine was felt in the unconscious universe. It made the breath a happy mystery. A love that bore the cross of pain with joy, eudemonized the sorrow of the world, made happy the weight of long, unending time, the secret caught of God's felicity. Affirming in life a hidden ecstasy, it held the spirit to its miraculous course. Carrying immortal values to the hours, it justified the labor of the suns. For one was there, supreme behind the God. A mother might brooded upon the world. A consciousness revealed its marvelous front, transcending all that is, denying none. Imperishable above our fallen heads, he felt a rapturous and unstumbling force. The undying truth appeared, the enduring power of all that here is made and then destroyed, the mother of all godheads and all strengths, who, mediatrix, binds earth to the supreme. The enigma seized that rules our nature's night. The covering nescience was unmasked and slain. Its mind of error was stripped off from things, and the dull moods of its perverting will. Illumined by her all-seeing identity, knowledge and ignorance could strive no more. No longer could the titan opposites, antagonist poles of the world's artifice, impose the illusion of their twofold screen, throwing their figures between us and her. The wisdom was near, disguised by its own works, of which the darkened universe is the robe. No more existence seemed an aimless fall. Extinction was no more the sole release. The hidden word was found, the long-sought clue. Revealed was the meaning of our spirit's birth. Condemned to an imperfect body and mind, in the inconscience of material things, and the indignity of mortal life, a heart was felt in the spaces wide and bare, a burning love from white spiritual founts annulled the sorrow of the ignorant depths. Suffering was lost in her immortal smile. Sukha, not dukkha. Namaste. Jai Ma. Well, be beautiful, be full of her might. She is working your yoga out in you, if you permit. Namaste. See you soon. Mother's Month. Thank you, Saptara. Much love to you all.